On my wedding day, my fiancé grabbed me by the hair and dragged me out into the cold rain. He treated me like I was nothing. My future mother-in-law accused me of stealing her necklace, and my own family took her side without asking a single question. Then my father grabbed the microphone and, in front of more than 200 guests, pointed at me and shouted, "She's a thief! She's been lying to all of us!" The room went silent. They thought I was broke. They thought I had lost everything. They were so busy protecting their reputation that they never stopped to ask who I really was. What none of them knew was that the woman they had just humiliated owned a company worth over $5 million. They expected me to cry. They expected me to beg for forgiveness. Instead, I did something that changed all of their lives forever. But before I tell you what happened next, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your city right now. I'd love to know who's here with me today. Now, let me take you back to where this story began. My name is Sarah Miller. For 24 years, I was the girl who stayed quiet. I was the invisible daughter who always put family first, no matter how much it hurt. I grew up in a beautiful house in New York, but inside those walls, love wasn't free. It was earned through status. My father, Robert Miller, was a cold, strict man who ran a mid-sized real estate firm. To the outside world, he was a successful businessman. But inside, he was drowning in debt, desperately trying to keep up appearances with the city's elite. He measured a person's worth solely by their net worth and their social standing. Because I was gentle and always avoided conflict, my family assumed I was weak. They thought I was a blank slate they could write their demands on, a girl who would just swallow her pride and do what she was told. I spent my whole life trying to win my father's approval, hoping that one day he would look at me and say he was proud of me. When I met Ethan Vance, I thought my lonely days were finally over. Ethan was charming, handsome, and came from an old money family that frequented the same country clubs as my father. I genuinely believed he loved me for who I was on the inside. I thought his mother, Victoria Vance, was just a protective parent who wanted the best for her son. I didn't see the cold calculation in her eyes when she looked at me. I didn't realize that in their high society world, a sweet, quiet girl wasn't a blessing. She was an easy target. I went into my relationship completely blind, filled with innocence, ready to give everything to the man I loved. I thought I was building a family of my own. I had no idea that the people I trusted most were just waiting for the perfect moment to tear my life apart. The real trouble started 14 months ago, right after my maternal grandmother passed away. She was the only person in my family who truly understood me, and in her will, she left me her most prized possession, a beautiful, historic oceanfront beach house in Malibu, California. The moment the lawyer read the will, the vultures in my life began to circle. My father, Robert, immediately tried to pressure me into signing the deed over to his real estate firm. He told me it was for the family business, but I knew he just wanted to flip the property to clear his own massive corporate debts. At the same time, Ethan and his mother, Victoria, became completely obsessed with the house. Every single dinner turned into a lecture about how our future children needed the financial security of that prime real estate. But I chose a different path, a path that required an unbelievable sacrifice. I secretly sold the Malibu beach house to a private buyer for $450,000. I didn't buy luxury clothes or sports cars with that money. Instead, I poured every single dollar into Aura Skin, a tiny, bankrupt, eco-friendly cosmetic startup that was days away from shutting down forever. I saw potential where everyone else saw failure. For an entire year, my life became a blur of exhausting 18-hour workdays. I lived a double life. To my father and Ethan, I was just a quiet girl working a lazy, low-paying office job. They constantly mocked me for it. Ethan would roll his eyes when I said I was too tired to go out to expensive dinners, and my father would compare me to my successful cousins. I swallowed my pride and took the insults. I worked in the shadows, skipping meals, managing supply lines, and rebuilding Oraskin from scratch. My dream wasn't just to be wealthy. My dream was to wait until the business was completely stable, stand before my father on a major stage, and hand him the success story. I wanted to give him the ultimate surprise, proof that his quiet daughter was capable of building an empire. Everyone in my life thought I still held the deed to that expensive Malibu beach house. They treated me like a prize because of a piece of land they thought I owned. I let them believe it because I wanted to see their true colors. I wanted to see if Ethan would still hold my hand if he thought I was just an ordinary girl, or if he was just in love with my grandmother's inheritance. Little did I know, my secret was a ticking time bomb. The grand reveal I had planned for my life was going to happen much sooner than I expected, but it wouldn't happen with a happy celebration. It would happen in the middle of a brutal betrayal that would change me forever. The trap slammed shut on our wedding day. Everything was set up at the high-end Plaza Ballroom, a venue that cost more than my annual salary at my supposed office job. The room was breathtaking, filled with 200 of New York's elite guests, expensive white roses, and a soft jazz band playing in the corner. I stood in my bridal suite, looking at my reflection in the mirror, wearing a beautiful white tulle dress. My heart was pounding with excitement. I had a folder in my briefcase, the latest financial reports of Aura Skin. I had decided that tonight, during our reception toasts, I would stand up and announce my success to everyone. But less than an hour before the ceremony was supposed to start, the atmosphere completely shifted. Through an accidental banking leak involving my old inheritance tax documents, Ethan and his mother, Victoria, found out the truth. They discovered that the Malibu beach house had been sold months ago and that my personal bank account was practically empty. To them, I was no longer a wealthy heiress. I was completely penniless. Instead of calling off the wedding quietly, Victoria decided to humiliate me in the most brutal way possible to ensure I left their social circle forever. Suddenly, the double doors of the ballroom burst open. Victoria stormed into the main hall, screaming at the top of her lungs that her priceless $80,000 heirloom diamond necklace had been stolen. The jazz music stopped instantly. 200 guests turned their heads, gasping. Victoria marched straight past the security guards directly into my bridal suite. With a look of pure hatred, she grabbed my designer handbag off the vanity table, walked out onto the center floor of the ballroom, and dumped everything inside onto the shiny marble floor. Before I could even speak, a heavy, sparkling diamond necklace slid across the floor, stopping right at Ethan's feet. "I knew it!" Victoria yelled, her finger pointing directly at my face. "She is a fraud, a low-class gold digger. She sold her grandmother's property, spent all the money, and now she is stealing from my family to cover her tracks." My ears were ringing, my breath caught in my throat. I looked down at the necklace, then up at Ethan. "Ethan, please, you have to believe me. I don't know how that got in there. I didn't do this, I swear," I begged, my tears finally breaking through. But Ethan's face wasn't filled with confusion. It was a cold mask of pure disgust. "Don't touch me, you parasite," he hissed, stepping back. Desperate, I turned to my father, Robert. He was standing near the stage, his face turning bright red with embarrassment as he watched the wealthy city elites whispering and looking at him. He didn't come to comfort me. He didn't ask for an explanation. Instead, his pride snapped. He walked over, grabbed the microphone from the center stage, and roared so loudly that the speakers echoed through the entire ballroom. "I raised her, but I didn't know my own daughter was a professional thief. She has brought nothing but shame to the Miller name. I disown her." Before the words could even settle in my mind, my father walked over and slapped me hard across the face. The force knocked me to my knees. Then, Ethan stepped forward. He didn't look like the man who had promised to love me forever. He looked like a monster. He grabbed me tightly by my styled hair, pulled me off the floor, and violently dragged me across the ballroom. My wedding dress tore against the floor as 200 guests watched in silent satisfaction. He pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the venue and threw me out onto the concrete pavement into the freezing, pouring rain. "Stay away from my family, you trash," Ethan barked, and the heavy doors slammed shut behind me. I sat on the freezing, wet concrete for what felt like hours. The heavy rain washed the makeup off my face and soaked completely through my ruined wedding dress. From behind the thick glass doors of the Plaza Ballroom, I could still hear the faint, muffled sound of the jazz band. They hadn't even stopped the party. They were celebrating my departure. In that exact moment, sitting in the dark and the cold, something inside the old, eager-to-please Sarah died. The warm, desperate need for my father's approval and Ethan's love evaporated. The tears running down my cheeks stopped, freezing into a hard, unbreakable layer of pure, icy clarity. I realized that being kind, patient, and quiet had gotten me absolutely nothing. I had spent my entire life protecting the feelings of people who didn't hesitate to destroy my dignity in front of 200 strangers. I wiped the rain from my eyes, reached deep into the hidden inner pocket of my soaked bridal gown, and pulled out my encrypted business phone. The screen flashed to life, casting a bright glow in the dark night. The moment I unlocked it, a high-priority email notification lit up my screen, followed immediately by a vibrating call from my head managing director. I picked up the phone, my voice completely steady, devoid of any emotion. "Speak," I said. "Sarah, we did it," my director breathed on the other end, his voice shaking with pure excitement. "The legal teams just finalized everything. The nationwide distribution contract with Sephora is officially signed. It's a done deal." Because of this massive retail contract, Aura Skin's market valuation hadn't just recovered, it had instantly skyrocketed by 10 times. My personal majority shares in the company were now worth exactly $5.4 million. I stood up slowly, ignoring the pain in my knees and the sting on my face where my father had struck me. I looked at the grand entrance of the ballroom, and a quiet, breathless laugh escaped my lips. They thought they had thrown out a penniless, broken little girl onto the street. They had absolutely no idea that they had just unleashed a multi-millionaire monster. My desire to give them a happy surprise was completely dead. Now, it was time to show them what a real professional could do. I stepped into the street, hailed a lone yellow cab, and began to plan their absolute ruin. I didn't waste a single second crying over the next 2 weeks. Instead, I moved into a luxury high-rise apartment downtown and turned my living room into a war room. The naive girl who wanted to please everyone was gone. I was now a cold, calculating CEO executing a flawless corporate takedown. My first move was to secure the truth. I ordered my tech security chief to bypass the venue's main systems and pull the encrypted cloud backup footage from the bridal suite's hidden nanny cam. When the file downloaded, I watched the footage with a cold smile. There it was in crystal clear high definition, Victoria Vance slipping the diamond necklace into my handbag while Ethan stood by the doorway checking his watch. They had planned it together. Next, I went after their lifelines. I had my financial analyst dig into the Vance family logistics business. Just as I suspected, they were drowning in bad debt and on the verge of bankruptcy. I didn't hesitate. I used a private holding company to quietly step in and purchase 100% of their bank liabilities. By the end of the week, I didn't just hold a grudge against Ethan and his mother, I officially owned their debt. I was their sole creditor. Then I turned my attention to my father, Robert. His real estate firm relied heavily on corporate partnerships. I immediately pulled all of Aura Skin's massive corporate accounts away from his agency, and I used my new leverage to blacklist his firm across every major tech and retail network in the tri-state area. Word spreads fast in high society. Within days, his biggest clients began canceling their contracts without explanation. To pull them all into the trap, I had our marketing firm host a massive, ultra-exclusive VIP corporate venture gala at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. We sent out anonymous, non-transferable invitations to the city's top business owners, specifically targeting Robert Miller and the Vance family. They were desperate for funding, and our invitations promised an introduction to New York's newest multi-millionaire anchor investor. They swallowed the bait instantly. They had no idea that the mysterious billionaire investor they were begging to meet was the same girl they had dragged out into the rain. The grand ballroom at the Mandarin Oriental was beautiful, filled with the exact same high society crowd that had watched me get dragged out 2 weeks prior. From a private balcony, I watched them. My father, Robert, was pacing nervously, desperately hunting for an investor to save his collapsing firm. Nearby, Ethan and Victoria were sipping champagne, already trying to pitch Ethan to a new wealthy heiress in the room. They looked confident, completely unaware that their lives were about to end. The room fell into a sudden hush as the master of ceremonies walked up to the stage microphone. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we are honored to introduce the primary anchor investor of this event, the founder and CEO of the $5 million Aura Skin empire." The heavy double doors swung open, and the spotlights shifted to the back of the room. I walked down the center aisle, wearing a sharp, custom-tailored emerald green power suit, my head held high. The absolute horror on my father's and Ethan's faces as I took the stage microphone was worth every drop of freezing rain I had endured. Victoria dropped her champagne glass, the crystal shattering loudly on the floor. Before they could even breathe, I looked directly at their table and pointed to the massive projector screens behind me. "Before we discuss business tonight," I said into the microphone, my voice echoing with absolute authority, "I want to show you a short clip about corporate integrity." The crystal-clear security video of Victoria planting the necklace in my bag began to loop on the giant screens. A collective wave of disgust and audible gasps rippled through the 200 elite guests. Victoria's face turned completely pale. "2 weeks ago, Ethan Vance dragged me by my hair because he thought I was a penniless thief," I continued, staring coldly into his shaking eyes. "And my father, Robert, disowned me to save his precious reputation. Well, Ethan, the luxury penthouse apartment your mother brags about is owned by my subsidiary. Your eviction notice was signed an hour ago. And as the primary holder of your family business's bank debt, I am officially calling in your loans tomorrow morning. You are entirely bankrupted. As for you, Dad, you called me a professional thief in front of the world to protect your pride. Tonight, I have officially cut all financial ties with your firm. You can explain to your remaining clients why your office doors are locking permanently next Monday." Victoria began to wail, dropping to her knees and begging me for mercy in front of the flashing media cameras, while Ethan hid his face in absolute shame. My father stood frozen, trembling under the weight of total social ruin. I didn't raise my voice, and I didn't look back. I simply signaled my private security guards. They grabbed Ethan, Victoria, and Robert and dragged them out of the gala, leaving them out in the cold night, exactly the way they had done to me. Walking out to my limousine, looking up at the city skyline, the heavy weight of my past was completely gone. I was finally free, fully protected by the empire I built with my own 2 hands.